Ray OP, Karen Huger shocked watching her DUI bodycam footage. Former RHOP star, Karen Huger was just sentenced for her DUI arrest, but she did have to watch the bodycam footage at some point. When she finally did see the behavior she exuded, Huger was shocked at what transpired. So what exactly did she say, and when was it shown to her? Keep reading for more details. Karen Huger shocked watching her DUI bodycam footage. Although Karen Huger was arrested in March 2024, she just had her sentencing for her DUI arrest. When she was arrested, she asked the officers if they knew who she was. They did not, and then she continued on with her grande dame speech and other additions regarding Thomas Jefferson. At the time, she claimed she had one beer before leaving a friend's home. Yet more alcohol was discovered in the car, and this was not her first offense. That was something the judge took into account when sentencing her. She received 2 years in prison with 1 year suspended and cannot drive for a year after her release. Additionally, she announced that she was exiting the RHOP and would not return next season. This came before her sentence was handed down, but it seemed she did not want to be held accountable. Possibly she knew that she would be incarcerated, so she wanted to decide for herself. Either way, she did not appear at the Season 9 reunion as she claimed she was seeking help. However, Andy Cohen promised she would be there in some capacity. As promised, during the Sunday, March 2nd airing of the reunion, Karen Huger and her husband, Ray, were shown. According to Page 6, they were speaking about her arrest as she had just been found guilty. She admitted she had yet to see the disturbing bodycam footage from the night of her arrest before her trial. More so, she did not want to see it, but when she did, she was shocked by her behavior. Despite Karen Huger knowing what the footage held, seeing it happen before her eyes was a huge wake-up call. She admitted that this was all her fault, and she had no one to blame but herself. Regardless of whether she took accountability or not, she still drove under the influence and caused a wreck. Karen stated she was headed to rehab to deal with this, but she stayed less than a month at a wellness facility. While in front of the judge, she had this to say. After RHOP fans saw this small segment, what were their thoughts? Let's stop with trying to force sympathy for a habitual drunk driver for spent 2 days in rehab. She's clearly lying and trying to do damage control. This is her 4th DUI. I don't drink and drive, but have had 4 DUIs. Some also felt it was awkwardly staged, but Karen has seen the footage. She seems to know she did wrong, and now will face her punishment. Karen Huger sat frozen, eyes locked on the screen as the bodycam footage rolled. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the television speakers, playing back the events of that fateful night. She had been bracing herself, but nothing could prepare her for the stark reality of watching herself from the perspective of the police officers. On screen, the flashing red and blue lights bounced off the glossy black surface of her car. The officer's voice, calm but authoritative, instructed her to step out. Karen, dressed in an elegant but slightly disheveled white pantsuit, emerged from the vehicle with her signature grace, albeit with a slight wobble. She inhaled sharply. "Oh Lord, that's not my best angle." Her husband, Ray Huger, sitting beside her on the couch, gave a small sigh but said nothing. He knew better. He had learned long ago that when the Grand Dane was processing something, commentary was unnecessary, if not dangerous. On screen, the officer asked, "Ma'am, have you had anything to drink tonight?" Karen's lips twitched as she watched herself widen her eyes dramatically, her hands gesturing. "Oh, darling, I've had a sip of champagne, but nothing worth mentioning." The real-life Karen let out a dry laugh. "A sip. Oh, Karen, you should have gone into acting." Ray rubbed his temples as the footage continued. The officers guided her through a field sobriety test. In real time, it had felt like an eternity, But watching it back, Karen couldn't believe how obvious her swaying was. Her attempt to walk a straight line looked more like an interpretive dance performance at a low-budget theater production. She groaned. "Why am I moving like a drunk flamingo?" Ray side-eyed her. "Karen, we talked about this. It wasn't a great night." On screen, the officer asked her to recite the alphabet backwards. Karen in the footage gasped theatrically, placing a hand over her chest. "Sir, that is a cruel request. I couldn't do that sober." In the living room, Karen shook her head. "And that, my dear, is the truth." Then came the moment. The arrest. The Karen on screen gasped, her eyes growing wide as the officer informed her she was being taken in. She took a step back, clutching her pearls. Because, of course, she was wearing pearls. "This is outrageous. Do you know who I am?" The real-life Karen buried her face in her hands. "Oh, sweet baby Jesus, not the 'do you know who I am'?" Ray sighed. "Yes, Karen. The 'do you know who I am'?" "I sound like an old Hollywood diva in a scandal. Next thing you know, I'll be slapping a reporter with a mink glove." On screen, the officer remained unbothered. "Ma'am, please turn around." Past Karen dramatically huffed but complied. As the cuffs clicked onto her wrists, she turned back to the officer and said, "I will have my lawyer handle this. And when I tell Andy Cohen, oh, it is over for you, sir." Karen nearly slid off the couch in horror. "Andy Cohen? Lord help me." Ray muttered, "Yes, you brought up Andy." She clutched her forehead. "I threatened the police with Andy Cohen. I'm never going to live this down." The footage ended, fading to black. Karen exhaled loudly and leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. Well, that was humbling. Ray turned to her. "Karen, you need to take this seriously." "Oh, I am, Ray. I truly am." She gestured wildly toward the now dark TV screen. "I just didn't realize how extra I was that night." Ray gave her a look. "You didn't realize." She huffed. "All right, fine. Maybe I had an inkling." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Karen sat up, smoothing down her silk robe. "Ray, this is a scandal." "Yes, Karen." She nodded, lips pursed in determination. "And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's to turn a scandal into a storyline." Ray blinked. "Karen." She held up a hand. No, listen to me. I've been through many things on this show. A wig shift. A perfume launch fiasco. A homeownership scandal. But this," she motioned grandly, "this is the piece de resistance. I must take control of the narrative." Ray ran a hand over his face. "Karen, this isn't a storyline. It's a real legal situation. And that's exactly why I must get ahead of it. We call a meeting with the producers. We shoot a sit-down confessional. A heartfelt moment with the ladies, well, except for Gazelle, because that woman will eat me alive." Ray groaned. "Karen, this is not a PR strategy." She stood up dramatically. "Raymond, I am the grand dame. Everything in my life is a PR strategy." He shook his head, but a small smile played on his lips. Even in the face of scandal, Karen Huger was undeniably Karen Huger. Later that night, as she scrolled through social media, she sighed. The blogs were ablaze, the headlines brutal. But then an idea struck her. She picked up her phone, took a deep breath, and hit record. "Good evening, my loves," she began, her tone calm but firm. "I want to personally address the recent incident involving myself. I take full accountability for my actions that night, and I am working diligently to ensure this never happens again. Growth, accountability, and responsibility. These are the marks of a true grand dame." She paused, then flashed a slight smile. Now let's all have a sip of champagne, responsibly, of course." As she ended the video, she turned to Ray, triumphant. See? A scandal spun into a teachable moment. Ray shook his head, muttering, "Only you, Karen. Only you."